Hello. Hello.
All right, here we go. Confidence Conversations with Idara. And our conversation today is with Dr. Amy Nantkes. Amy, thank you so much for making the time to be here. It is a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for asking me. I'm so excited to be asked. I
My
always
pleasure.
wanted to be on a podcast.
How are you not a podcast guest on a regular basis? I don't even know.
Listen, Amy Poehler has my number. I don't know what she's doing. I said I would be on the next episode of Good Hang, and I'm just waiting for a publicist or something. I don't know.
It was just a matter of time, and still a matter of time. We're just starting with this one. I was saying earlier, I can't even believe I just didn't think about inviting you before. It has been such a pleasure spending time with you on the commission. And it has been impressive to see you work not only as a commissioner, as a professor, and the care that you give to everything you do is so impressive, inspirational, and I am amazed at how much you do and with what seems like the relative ease with which you do it, and also the fact that you also have to you know how to proper have a good time. You make the time to do joyful things as well, and I love it. By way of introduction, I'll say I knew you were a professor when we first met. So officially working backwards, you are an associate professor of political science, which is awesome.
Yes.
Promoted from
Recently.
assistant. Yes, congratulations again. Promoted from
Thank
assistant
you.
professor of political science. And prior to that, you were political science faculty, but you did that in conjunction with being interim director for a public administration bachelor's program, which was great. I think I remember that as well because there was work in progress to do a post-bac program, and you were building that as well, which is also testament to your being proactive and also thinking about how things can be improved. And prior to that, you had a long stretch of being an adjunct faculty in a couple of places also related to political science and talking
so much
about
hustle.
So much. And again, just making it look like ease. You also, in the course of looking at the fact that you're in academia and in education, I was looking also at your educational background too, the path to Dr. Nantkes, so a PhD in political science, but you'd also done a master's in social entrepreneurship and change, which I have not heard about before. And when we pause, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, but a bachelor's in science and cross-cultural studies and teaching English as a foreign language, which you also did as a certification.
Yes.
I'm
all over the place.
And that's your academic.
It makes sense though.
It does, and that's your academic experience. And you mentioned that before that you had, this is your second career in a manner of speaking. So what did you do before that?
Yeah, I mean, my first career was a long stretch of starting as actually late in my late teens as a volunteer working at a local church. Just my youth pastor said, like, hey, we want you to do some kids ministry and family ministry, and can you counsel kids at camp and, you know, all of that. And I really fell into something that I loved, which was just being around kids, young teens, families, and kind of looking at like what does spiritual formation at that age look like. And then along the way got really involved in a lot of social initiatives, specifically around poverty elimination. I guess I would say alleviation, because the church is really good at benevolence, but not always at systemic issues.
Solutions, yeah.
And that's where the master's in social entrepreneurship and change came from, was when I was ready to go back to grad school, which was, you know, years into my career, marriage, kids, all of those things. I was like, okay, it's time for the next thing. I was curious about, well, how do we look at systems and structures and affect change, work within institutions to affect change, or also just invent new things. That's the entrepreneurship piece. So social enterprise is really just business that does good.
Yeah.
You have one of those, by the way. You serve a social good
Yeah.
in your work. And so looking at that kind of triple bottom line of people, profit, and planet. So, caring for our environment, for creation. Obviously, being sustainable, profit, it's different than a nonprofit.
Right.
And the people portion, treating people well, making sure they're paid fair wages. They have things like paid family leave, which,
Right.
we're always talking about. And yeah, so that that educational period of time in my life really reignited my desire to be in higher ed. And I had this question of like, okay, if I keep going, because I'm really interested in public policy. So if I keep going, if I get a PhD in political science and really lean heavily into this, is there going to be a space in academia for me? Because I'm a real late bloomer. A lot of people, a lot of my peers just went all the way through. They did their undergrad, then they did their master's, then they got their PhD, and then they started teaching. So a little bit of a different path, but all of it kind of working together in a really cool way.
Like you said, it makes sense. Getting that additional context sheds light on the threads of looking for sustainability and systemic approaches to things. You talked about social enterprise, and when I have described to people, there have been times, especially in the early stages with launching the antidote, when I talked about rebuilding confidence in women in the workplace, that people thought it was a nonprofit because that was the model in their minds that made sense if you're saying anything that implies social good, as opposed to the idea of making those systemic changes that contribute to success for society as a whole, because that's really what it amounts to. The other threat.
And being able to live.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. The other
Not
thread that you
underrated.
mentioned was, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I didn't miss the last thing that you said.
No, I just said it's not an underrated, being able to live is a good thing.
Yeah, it's reasonable. It's reasonable to want to live, and it's achievable. It's not nearly as difficult as people think that it is. It's the working together, coming with the educated and informed position, and to your point about going beyond benevolence, doing it in a way that's sustainable for where that issue is, that it needs to be resolved. What I was starting to say earlier was the other theme that I hear now that you've described your previous career is really looking at catching people at a relatively young age, not only working on these solutions, but if we understand and equip people from a younger age, that it starts earlier for society as well.
Yeah, Frederick Douglas very famously said, it's easier, what does he say? I'm going to totally mess up this quote now that I've said it, but it's easier to build up a child than to repair a man.
That makes
But
sense.
I mean, sure. I think if we have the tools that we need and understanding, I mean, that's why a lot of poverty elimination programs are, and a lot of other programs that look at social issues are considering a 2-generation approach, not just working with families or parents, but also considering the children. So yeah, it makes sense to me. And that's why I'm forever in college, is what I say, is because I spend all my time around these amazing undergrads, who are in their late teens, early 20s, and sometimes older with our master's program that we've launched. But the thing that they have in common, not age always, but that desire and humility, intellectual humility, and the desire to keep learning and growing and discovering. And so that is a beautiful thing.
It really is. It's beautiful. And ideally, it's something that we would never lose, to continue to learn, not only be willing and curious, but to continue to learn and apply the things that we're learning. And it's one of the things I've noticed also in the way that you work. It's definitely not just about a classroom with you. You take the students and you expose them to very relevant, very current, and in a lot of ways personal aspects of education. So they learn it within themselves. It's not like someone is telling me and I need to do it just for a grade. That seems like an inevitable outcome of the way that you approach your approach to teaching.
Yeah, I mean, it's the pedagogy is called embodied learning. So something a colleague and I kind of within the last few years really picked up on. We just wrote a paper on it and presented it at a political science conference of all places. But
Of course.
how do you, and kind of pitching it as not an anti-AI or an anti-tech thing, but just as a way to be more fully immersed in your learning experience and to allow kind of all of your senses to interact with that learning and help you engage better. And what we've found is that it's a really effective way to learn, not just learning about, for example, the history of women's suffrage, with its complexity and so many different people involved and opposing viewpoints about who should get the vote and when and where and how. But to go stand and sit in those spaces, like we go to the home of Elizabeth Cady Stanton in Seneca Falls, New York, and we sit on her porch with our students and we talk about her relationship with Susan B. Anthony and the issue of race and how contested, there were groups that were saying, Black men should get the vote before women, and others were saying, no, white women should get it, and then we can work our way through. And, just working with those complexities of stories, but you can talk about it in a classroom, but when you're sitting on someone's porch and you're imagining their life, it's completely different.
It makes it real in a different way. And what you're describing also calls to light the role of history. If you understand what has happened before, it gives you a better appreciation and understanding of what can happen now and potentially what is necessary moving forward.
Yeah.
The variety of things that you've done in what feels like a relatively short amount of time is always, at the root of it is always deep care and passion, just on the outside looking in. I would also say that it takes a high degree of self-confidence to do the things that you do the way that you do it, meaning you believe it, and so you live what you believe. What would you say is the definition of confidence, or what does confidence mean to you?
I would say my earlier years, I thought confidence was a lot about being self-assured and really not showing a lot of vulnerability. So if people around me were suffering, great, I'm going to care for them, but not showing ever if I was suffering or needed something necessarily. So with time, I think, and wisdom and learning how to show up with my full self, trying things that I wasn't sure I would be good at. Confidence for me has become asking for what I want and need, instead of going without or worrying about perception. So yeah, confidence has really shifted for me, I would say, in the last maybe 10 years of my life. That's had to do with a whole lot of factors, but I think part of it is just getting a little bit older and getting more comfortable in my own skin and doing some of these things that I thought, like, I don't really know if I can pull this off, but it feels like if I'm going to try, now's the time.
Yeah.
And having it gratefully, like, really work out. Yeah. So that builds your confidence too.
And you wouldn't
when
know
you try
it
things and they work
if you didn't try it.
Right. Yeah. And I'm someone who's actually pretty risk averse.
Interesting.
I don't love risk. Yeah. So in the face of risk, I haven't always felt very confident.
Yeah.
But I would
what
say,
becomes the motivation then? If you're risk averse, what's your motivation to try something?
I think my imagination of like the possibility of what could be.
Yeah.
And also understanding, again, as I've gotten older and I have a family and I'm thinking about my kids, like I'm a first generation. I was a first gen undergrad, first to finish college, first to get my master's, definitely first to get my PhD in my family. So thinking about the generational consequences, if I'm willing to take some calculated risks, how that could impact down the line, maybe, you know, generations I'll never even get to meet. So yeah, I think that's that's been the impetus for me.
With that definition of confidence being that despite the risk, because of what's possible, you go ahead anyway. What's a time in your career where being confident has made a difference?
This question cracks me up because I have had times where I've had conversations and later I've been like, did I just do that? Like what?
Same here.
And this was several years ago. So I had been adjuncting at, and for if you're not in academia, adjunct is like a really cool opportunity to be a part-time kind of on contract instructor. Every school structures it differently, but for the schools I was at, basically it was a class at a time. So a class would come up and they would say, hey, do you want to teach this? We have this class, yes or no. And then yes, you sign the contract, you teach the class. And when it's done, it's done. There's no more obligation to continue to offer you anything. It's a low commitment on both sides, but also a very tenuous way to try to break into academia. And I really didn't have any other choice because I did not want to go on the job market. So academia, typically when you're getting close to dissertation time or finishing up your dissertation, you go on the market and you basically try to sell like, hey, I'm great. I can do research. I can teach. I can bring all these things to the institution. And it's brutal. It's so brutal. And it's really hard to get a tenure track job. Politically, particularly in my field of political science, it's tough. And I didn't want to move my family. I had moved around as a kid and just did not want to put my kids through that, having to move, middle schools or high schools or elementary schools. So, so after I had been at my institution for a while adjuncting and just had fallen in love with like the students and the faculty and the environment, and it's a really special place. I couldn't actually imagine myself anywhere else. So I emailed who was our dean at the time, and now he's up higher in administration and such a good guy, such a great leader. I emailed him and said, hey, I know we've met. I've been adjuncting. Can I just have a meeting with you and talk about some ideas? And he was like, sure, yeah, come on in. So I wrote my notes out. I went in super nervous to this meeting, just like, okay, I'm just going to give this a try because the worst he can say is no, the worst. And I was like, hey, I have an idea. So I know there's no line open, which basically means there's no opportunity for a tenure track position in political science anytime soon. Like there's just no need to add another full-time faculty on. I get that. But the university has been talking a lot about increasing capacity and can we reach more students through online education and students who maybe traditionally couldn't do, come to campus, sit in the classroom, do those sorts of things because of like where they're at in life or finances or work, a whole host of reasons, right? I said, what if we launched a program in like public policy or public administration? I think there's a market for it. And I could, help to launch that and also teach the undergrads in political science. And he was like, oh, wow, this is not at all like what I thought you were coming here to talk to me about. Let me think about it. And it was a little bit before I heard back from him. And I had told, my colleagues and stuff like, I give this a try. And I was at a political science conference with a colleague presenting a paper together. And I got an email saying, hey, when you get back from the conference, can you meet with myself and another person in administration? We want to talk to you about your idea. And that was the beginning of me literally working myself into a job.
Wow. That is
awesome. Months later, I had secured, a full-time tenure track assistant professor position. I literally made a position for myself. And I have to say, like, a lot of this happened because I had really good colleagues who advocated for me and said, yeah, we really want her here. So if this is how we do it, like, let's do this. Had I not had that support from the other professors in my department or, these administrators, there's no way it would have happened.
Yeah, I can see that.
And hadn't I made the connection I had made with the students? I mean, I'm really grateful. I've made a really strong connection with students and have been able to have these incredible experiences with them, like traveling with them and, you know, some out of the classroom type experiences, going to Board of Supervisors meetings, doing field trips around San Diego. So, yeah, I was confident in that I needed to take the risk. And I think that's a good example of me not really being sure what the outcome was going to be, but knowing it was time and I needed to do it. If I was going to move ahead, I was going to have to start asking for what I wanted and what I needed.
Yeah. And so what, as you were just repeating the point about not necessarily knowing, and you mentioned being nervous, what you did know, however, was that you did not want to move if you didn't have to. You had a great time with the students. You loved the students. It's clear that you had great relationships and the people around you knew that they could rely on you. And that's definitely something to be underscored. I can see how that would be the case wherever you go, that you show up fully caring and demonstrating not only that you can do this, that you want to be here. So I could totally see your colleagues getting on board and them, you know, backing up the request. The picture here, however, remains that you were attentive to an issue that needed to be resolved and coming with a solution, an innovative solution. And this is before the pandemic. This is not like, you know, 2020, right?
Yeah, so actually this conversation happened post-pandemic or I don't know, I mean, I think we were still wearing masks places, but we were okay to travel.
Yes.
I remember that. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but maybe it would have been 21.
Okay, as you were finishing okay. The reason why I thought I was thinking about the couple of adjunct roles that you had, and that if it was that earlier time, like between 2017, 2020, that it was because before the pandemic, we could not, yes, in technology, people were working remotely, but we just could not wrap our minds around working remotely. And that was just something that was certainly not the norm, but after the pandemic, it was something we could wrap our mind around. But you identified a solution and proposed a solution. And that thing is really, despite being nervous, but the possibility on the other side of it, and just knowing that there was that possibility of change. Talking about being nervous, though, talking about the fact that you not only don't know the outcome, it's a risk that you're not sure is going to necessarily work out the way that you want, but it's something you want. There are times when you're not feeling confident, that there are times when it's just like it's not all there, no matter how it presents. What are some of the things that you have found to be useful tools for boosting confidence? If there have been times when you needed a confidence boost or reminder, what works for you? What has worked for you?
Beyonce music, always.
I've seen it. I've seen it,
Amy. Always Beyonce. No, really though, music. That's funny. There's times where I'm on my way somewhere, like to speak, or even on my way to a meeting, and I'm like, okay, time to pump up, you know, and I'll just put on music that I love, that makes me happy, that makes me feel good. And it's almost always Beyonce, let's be honest. No, really though, yes, that. And I think also I'm going to present two kind of contradictory visions of this, because I do think, first of all, you are your own best advocate. I always say this, and I think it's just from years of experience in institutions, that the institution isn't going to love you back. So you have to do the work to advocate for yourself. And you can't wait for others to do that, or for a system or a structure to say like, oh, it's time for your promotion. Even in the best of situations, right? And this isn't being negative on any particular institution. I think it's just the nature of it. So being your own best advocate. I had this really profound experience once where I call myself a reluctant runner. I don't enjoy it necessarily, but I love how I feel after. And, you know, certain ways in, and I was at my gym and the coach was on the little microphone on the loudspeaker, and he had been my coach for a long time and had seen me through like walking to running, literally. We were ending like a big push, had been running for a while, and I was getting tired. And he said like, okay, I want you to picture yourself getting ready to cross a finish line and there's people cheering you on. Who do you picture? And normally in that situation, I would have been like, oh, my friends, my family, my kids. But in that moment, I pictured myself. And and then I started crying at the gym.
That's
which
very powerful, Amy.
Don't recommend.
That is very,
it was dark.
That is such a powerful image. Yourself.
It was though. Yes. I saw myself going like, come on, girl, let's get it. Like keep going, don't give up, don't stop. And that this was several years ago. That image has really stuck with me. So I think like, again, learning to be my own best advocate, having to stick up for myself, or just put myself in places and spaces or try to, elbow my way into the table, so to speak. But also, okay, so contradictory, also that, but I think like confidence can really flourish in community and in good community. So friends and family to remind me who I am. My best friend, she grounds me all the time. All I have to do is call her and say, Lauren, help. It's just like, okay, let me remind you who you are. She'll give me like the best kind of talking to. Close friends who are also professors because they understand kind of the wildness of academia. Not all of them work at the same school as me, but just being able to kind of commiserate about like, oh my gosh, trying to get published is so wild. My kids, like they pump me up. They're so great. They're so kind and wonderful. My husband, who was like, oh, you can do this. Like, what are you stressed about? Like, this is no big deal. So I think like, again, myself and then my community, because I don't think anything is achieved truly on our own. I just don't subscribe to that. No.
Like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You accomplish more together. There's really no way around it. You can do a lot alone, and there's definitely something to be said for the power of the individual. But if we're going to get big things done, we need people. We can't do it on our own.
And we definitely need Beyonce, always.
She has written some pretty impressive things. She has. And I when I was talking about knowing how to happen, the not missing the concerts, I'm like, yes, you know what needs to be done, taking care of you. That's
never more stressed in my life than trying to get tickets to a Beyonce tour. Listen. But it's an out-of-body experience.
When you get there, when you get there, and then the pictures after, and then the getting to celebrate. I remember the first time you mentioned going to one, I just thought, this is the coolest. I was like, is Amy gonna get cooler than this? What is happening right now?
Oh my gosh. Trying to keep up with you, Idara. Let's be honest.
Oh my. I mean, your point about individuals and community is so well taken. A lot when I in my book, I use the Merriam-Webster definition of competence. There's definitely something to be said for the self. I say it's I know I can rely on me, which is there's something there. You are amassing skills. You have, cheered yourself on, in a manner of speaking. And what's around you makes a difference as well. Merriam-Webster's definition says the feeling of consciousness of one's own powers and the ability to rely on one's environment. So if you're in spaces that fuel that encourage that, then your confidence just blossoms. And if you're not, if the opposite is the case, then yes, you can rely on you, but to the extent that we accomplish things with people, that part is affected. And so it really matters who's around you. So I really appreciate your call out of the things that contribute to the boost. Yes, there's the you part, but then there are, there's family and there's community and the reminders of who you are, those mirrors in the right moment.
So much. It's infinitely more fun and joyful to do those things together as a team, to say like, look what we did. I would, every time, I used to think I was like, and again, academia, it lends itself to this, right? Because you have your solo work, you can research with a person or a team or by yourself. Then you have like your group work, which is the classroom experience and all of that. But I think again, I'm learning to appreciate the group work more, and recognizing that I can't be everything that's needed in every circumstance. So if I'm part of a team, sounds really cliche. It's a little cheesy, but if I'm a part of a team where everyone's running in their own strengths and giftedness, like it is so much more gratifying. And also takes a lot of pressure off of, ourselves to be like the solo achiever.
And you really get more done with people. You really get more done. It's definitely a way to extend reach and just increase the level of accomplishments. It doesn't take away from you as an individual, but it is decidedly more effective to figure out what are the strengths around us, and then let's get this done together, which is even going into the next question about just activism. I was telling you that a lot of what I see in your taking action, I would just call you being an activist. What are the influences that have led to you being, and I'm not really hung up on the label itself, but activist to the extent that we're talking about seeing a need and taking action to be part of addressing it or address it. And in all of the work that you've done, the way that you do your work as a professor, in your volunteer work on the commission and elsewhere beyond, and now in having heard about the work that you did before, all of it has been about seeing a need and being part of working towards a solution. What are the influences that have led to that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for calling me an activist. I don't think anyone's ever called me an activist. I think of myself as more of an advocate, which is kind of working within an existing system to affect change. So thank you. That's really kind. I feel like activists are like, out there, like
you're
marching,
out there, Amy.
and
I've seen it.
I'm out there. I'm out there.
You are out
but
there.
Yeah,
you could be sitting, having a decidedly quieter, easy, just, chill on the farm type life. You could choose to do that. But you don't. You could just be okay, cozy off to the side, and you don't do that. You don't. You not only take intentional action, you go beyond comfort to see to it. And that's definitely the word that comes when you definitely advocate and you talk systems and you act. So
thank you.
I'm saying what I see, my pleasure. What are the influences
I think
to action?
Of the influences, I think just the examples of people who've gone before me. So historically, people that I've never met, when I think about leaders, for example, in the women's suffrage movement, leaders in the civil rights movement, people who aren't really named, but we feel the effects of the things that they did. So, I grew up with my grandparents having a significant influence on my life. And my grandfather, who was from a very small town, grew up on a farm in the South, and all the things that he saw growing up. And then as a very young man, went into the army and fought in World War II. And came home, I clearly didn't know my grandfather before he went off to the war, but I understood every day of my life how much that experience changed him. And he talked a lot about the people that he met and the places he went, and the things that he saw and experienced that he never would have seen or experienced. Some good, some really awful. Had he stayed on the farm. And something that Grandpa was really good at doing was talking with me about just people and the impression that they left on him. And so, I grew up being really fascinated by historical figures and people who were, affecting change, and specifically people who are working to make circumstances and systems and institutions better for women and girls. And so I think the work that I do now with the commission, the San Diego Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, and the other work I'm doing around CEDAW, which is a movement to get this really amazing human rights treaty of the UN adopted and implemented in localities in the United States to really protect women and girls against all forms of discrimination. That work is an outcropping of the influence earlier in my life, again, just having conversations about yeah, the impact that people can leave, and what happens if, again, we leave our space of comfort and we maybe go somewhere new, either literally somewhere new or figuratively somewhere new, and speak or work on behalf of ourselves and others. So I think that was something, I feel like that's always been in me. And I spent a long time being an advocate and working in different ways. And then coming into this kind of second career, something that I really was clear on from the beginning was I wanted a foot in each space. So if I was going to study public policy, if I was going to study American politics and American political development and understand institutions and how policy is made and who it's made for and who it's made sometimes against, I wanted to actually do something practical with that knowledge besides teaching, which is, I think, very practical. I wanted to be able to be in those systems and be affecting change. Not ever as a elected. I think we've talked about this, but I've said, like, I'm too thin-skinned, and as much confidence as I might put out in the world, like, I care too much what people think about me. I wouldn't want to have to worry about public opinion all the time. But I love being able to share what I think should happen in an informed way. So, so my education also has influenced, I think, my activism or advocacy as well, because I've seen scholars who, are very happy and do an amazing job of just supporting with research and supporting our discipline and supporting, higher education, academia, scholarship, people who are like brilliant at theory, and that's not me. But I love like the practical application of knowledge. So living on that side of things feels very comfortable to me.
Know what to do and how to do it. That's where the solutions lie, when we taking it from theory to practice.
Wrestling with, and I think not accepting things as like, well, that's the way things are, they can't change. But at least the first step, I think, is recognizing what is. And then asking ourselves, like, given institutional structures, given history, given, the environment we're working in, like, what is possible now? I think especially right now, a conversation I'm having a lot with students is about like, what's happening? We're seeing rights rolled back in every pocket, every corner, every dimension. We're in this time of really punctuated change. And it kind of flies in the face of like everything I teach about slow, deliberative democracy, the institutions that were built to withstand this or that. In the conclusion, I've been able to reach with my students and in my own advocacy is that, like, it's not, we don't have time to sit around and wring our hands. We gotta dig in and do the work. So that was a really long answer to your question.
Yes,
I took us there.
It's multifaceted. I get that. It's lovely to hear, and I really hope that he got to feel the impact that his story is and his sharing had on you, your grandpa, and how that followed from the very core of your upbringing into educating yourself and continuing to adapt as you went along. And what's more than likely happening now is that you're also being an influence to other people. I think also, in hearing you describe it, why the word advocate resonates more than activist is because you are not centering yourself, which is not to say that that's what activists do, but when you say advocate, you are really looking at this on behalf of others who are affected. You're seeing the effect and you're doing it. And yes, there are overarching things talking about things changing and things like voting rights acts and so on that have impacts across the board. But when you are in a space where you have an opportunity to act, to the extent that it's not something that's affecting you, or not necessarily something that's affecting you, I can see how the word advocacy will resonate, because it's not about me. Don't look at me. I am a means to accomplishing this for those who are around, for those who need it now. I can see how in just the language of what you're describing, it's for us to, it's to make it better for the proverbial us in a matter of speaking. It's not like, oh,
That's
you're
the
doing,
thing.
yes.
Yeah, this idea, and I think because we come from capitalism, and there's a scarcity, there's an idea of there's only so much,
Right.
so many slices of the pie to go around. And
Mm-hmm.
so, which has its place in, like, sure, I got to teach it, but also recognize the system we're in, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
also thinking about, like, again, kind of cliche, but that term, the phrase "a rising tide lifts all boats."
Yes.
I really do believe that in terms of rights and access. If we believe in something like democracy, for example, then we really would want everybody to have the access that they have the right to have. We would want them to have that unencumbered. I mean, that makes us better. That makes us freer. That makes us more whole.
Right.
That makes us truer to who we really are. And so, to me, those things shouldn't be threatening. Like, when people, we do this work to increase access to, rights for women and girls, and eliminate discrimination.
Yeah.
It's not anti-male.
Right.
Or it's really, it makes us all better.
Absolutely.
It's, the research shows in so many ways that when we lift up women and girls, that so many things societally get better. Health outcomes and social determinants of health, like all those things, like it all gets better.
Yeah.
Same thing with democracy. It gets better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it can't be about us or what we stand to gain. But I also think we should recognize, like, no, it'll work out in the end.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it doesn't have to be an us versus them, which is really, it happens so easily, that mindset of, scarcity, like you mentioned, that it's limited. But the reality is, if we really do believe in, rights, then it should not require someone else not having it in order for us to have access.
right.
And that should not be the belief, the underlying belief.
Yeah, and fear and scarcity are two sentiments that really drive politics and political rhetoric. That's what some of my, the core of my research is on, is using fear, scarcity, anxiety, group anxiety about position to drive along policy.
And it's very powerful. I often think that if we identify the opposite of that, whatever's the shortcut of that, much the same way there's certain terms that people hear and it signals something to them. If we identify those shorter cuts to the opposite of fear, the opposite of scarcity, the opposite of anxiety, and identify ways for people to lean into those positive elements, then we can affect change in those ways as well and get buy-in. But it's because it happens so quickly, so easily, and really taps into something where people don't have an opportunity to think. That's why fear, and that's what's needed in the rhetoric of moving things forward and having people act a certain way, because they're afraid, they're worried that something is going to be taken from them. It takes so much more to understand what's really the system behind it and how you can be part of making something positive happen instead.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of reasons why our brains do shortcuts to things, limited time, limited energy, we're pressed on all sides, just regular daily life. I'll leave that for my political psychologist friends to deal with, but I mean, there's a lot of reasons why those shortcuts work. But also, if you think about the best speeches you've ever heard, the best like political speeches you've heard, or the best kind of political rhetoric that inspires you, that I'm thinking of Senator Cory Booker, who, I'm famously a fan of because of his positivity and because of his belief in the best of us as Americans, the best of humanity. And, his marathon, like, stay up all night on the floor of Congress, but also yeah, just other folks who throughout the years have inspired us through, so the same, the same power of invoking fear, scarcity, anxiety,
Yeah.
it's there also to invoke, I guess, would confidence be the opposite of fear in this case, to bring it full circle, but to invoke that, to invoke a sense of purpose and
Yeah. Believe
community.
in me and I believe in us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I do still really believe in us. I mean,
Yeah.
as bad as
Things can be. Yes, we
things
need
can be.
more of
Mhm,
those messages. We often have a lot more in common than it
mhm,
looks like at first. It's if people are, if they are in that mode that, the fight or flight or depleted, then it's decidedly harder to tap into it.
mhm,
But there's no question that we definitely have more in common. And the things that remind us of that that allow us to be an us without needing a
mhm,
them are the things that
mhm.
will continue to work.
Yeah, and a core tenet of democracy again is that we all have equal representation.
Yeah.
So like
Right.
everybody's voice is heard,
Yes.
and if you want to pull up to the table, there's room for you. And
Yes.
I'm really, again, butchering Shirley Chisholm, who said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair.
Yeah.
But yeah, democracy would say we need to build a longer
A
table.
longer table. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it is a core tenet, being represented. So yes, signs of our times, but also I'm reminded on a daily basis by virtue of being around people who are doing things. I'm reminded on a daily basis of what's possible, of our own power in making things as we know that they need to be. And being around that is key to not wallowing, to not just
Mhm.
standing on wringing hands, to also preserving not only a sense of hope, but agency, being reminded of what you can do. No stranger
Yeah.
action at all, but I will still ask. Everything you do looks bold to me. But
Thanks.
what's your next bold move?
First, can I just say thank you for being a constant source of encouragement in my life? Every time I see you, you have something kind and encouraging to say, and it really means a lot. So thank
My
you.
pleasure. It's such a pleasure and an honor to get to sit with you regularly. Yes, it's in the context of the commission, but of course, in the course of it, I've come to know you well, and it is an absolute pleasure, delight, and honor, and it's mutual. Just by you showing up, you're inspiring people on a daily basis. I'm so glad we've had the time to sit and do this, that you made the time, because that is what you're doing on a daily basis. Dr. Amy Nantkes is
Thank you.
inspiring people.
Thank you. Next move. Um, so professionally, part of tenure is you need to get published. So I am working on a book proposal based on my research that I did, and have continued to do kind of the outcropping of work on my dissertation.
Okay.
Rhetoric and policy targeting immigrant women. And you've heard some of that presented before, but specifically on a policy in San Diego County that no longer exists, but was pretty heinous and lasted for way longer than it should have ever existed. So working on that actually this summer. And then just supporting efforts to see a CEDAW ordinance implemented, adopted and implemented in more localities in the United States.
Yeah.
So really putting those protections in place for women and girls, but also, building that pathway towards thriving for all of us. So trying to leave this place better than I found it. Yeah. So those are the bold things, but one of them happening kind of in isolation, the writing piece.
Yeah.
And one of them happening in community, in various communities I find myself in. So thankful to be surrounded by really, really, really brilliant women at this stage of my life that are all working towards this common goal. So yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Let's get it done.
Multiple moves simultaneously. No surprise there, if I'm being honest. Multiple
Always just
simultaneous, all bold. But the CEDAW, so I'll spell it out also in the description here. Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women being implemented in more cities, more localities, definitely impactful. And I'm looking forward to celebrating that professional accomplishment with you when you are done with the publication of the.
Thank you. One step at a time.
Well, yes, we'll get there, and we'll celebrate it and play some Beyonce while we're at it.
Yes, please. Beyonce themed.
Yes,
Beyonce themed book tour.
Amy, thank you so much for your time today. I knew that it was going to be an insightful conversation and learned even more than I anticipated in the process. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for bringing your love, care, passion, and skill to everything that you're doing. And you talking about one of your bold moves being leaving this place better than you met it. And I would say, as someone who has been able to observe you the last few years, that you have definitely done that. I know you're doing more, but you have already done that.
See, there you go again.
It only resonates because it's true. So thank you so much. Congratulations on all that you've done, and congratulations on what's ahead. I look forward to celebrating it with you.
Thanks, Idara. You're the best.